It's always nice to hear more than just our voices doing the pledge. It always sounds a little better. Yeah. Next, roll call. Absent is Dwayne. Seated for Dwayne is Ruth Ann. And absent is Sasha, and seated for Sasha is Eric. All other members present. Are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda?
No, sir, there are not.
Approval of the minutes. Do we have any additions or corrections to the minutes from the July 27th Planning Commission meeting?
Nope.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the July 27, 2017 minutes.
I'll second.
It's been moved by John, seconded by Rich, that we approve the meeting minutes from July 27th. Signify your approval by yes.
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 Abstain?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. The first item tonight is a public hearing on tracks A and C Cottonwood subdivision filing rezone. Stacy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. So this is the tracks A and C Cottonwood subdivision filing number 11 rezoning. So the request is to amend the Cottonwood Highlands plan development by adding 5.565 acres into the zoning. The property to be added is located west of Jordan Road and north of the Cottonwood Highlands development. The 5.6 acres to be added to the Cottonwood Highlands plan development is an existing stormwater detention pond. The pond, once zoned in the town, will be zoned open space. The stormwater detention pond was initially constructed within Douglas County. As development started within the Cottonwood Highlands property, improvements were required to the construction to this pond to accept stormwater from the Cottonwood Highlands development. The Cottonwood Highlands Metropolitan District acquired the pond and will be responsible for maintenance and operation of this facility. This request is being run concurrently with an annexation of this property. The proposed rezoning will make the pond a part of the Cottonwood Highlands development, but will not change any of the existing planting areas or residential density. So the project is consistent with the master plan, provides adequate access, infrastructure, drainage facilities, and design considerations. Utilities are located adjacent to the site, and it satisfies the 9 criteria to rezone. Therefore, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend that Town Council approve the zoning to include tracks A and C Cottonwood subdivision filing number 11 in the Cottonwood Highlands plan development as open space. This concludes the staff presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have. The applicant's representative, Rick Holp, is here to answer any questions that you may have tonight. And that's it.
For the record, we started this public hearing at 7:05. Questions for Stacy?
Nope, I don't.
No.
No. No.
Seeing none. Any questions for the applicant?
No.
No.
Okay. As this is a public hearing, we will open the discussion to public comment on this particular item, the detention pond matter. Anyone who wishes to speak to this matter, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and proceed. Seeing none, we will close the public comment. Oh, do we have one? Oh.
Are we able to get more information about what's going to be going on there? It's going to be right behind my house, and I'm just kind of curious if we're going to have running water, what sort of thing we're going to have back there.
Could you
Is this
state
the
your
right
name and
time?
address for the
Sorry.
record, please?
Scott Greenwood, and my address is 8775 Rosebud Place.
Okay. Stacy, or the applicant, either one?
So currently, the property is an existing stormwater detention pond. The property to the south, you can see it just below this green line, you can't see that, is the Cottonwood Highlands development. They're constructing improvements that will tie into it. Most likely, you're not going to see running water unless we have a storm.
Okay.
big storm, it all drains, so it's waters of the US that drain to Cherry Creek. And so it's Douglas County, Town of Parker, that'll drain north.
Okay.
So you may see running water every now and then.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, because right now there's a lot of standing water. So I'm curious if it's going to improve on that or not. So I guess that's kind of my thoughts.
So the standing water is probably maintenance related. Once the pond is brought into the town can enforce the maintenance responsibility on the Metro District. And so if you have that problem, please let us know and we can send an inspector out there.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment on this matter? Then we will close the public comment. Do we need further information from staff or the applicant?
Nope.
No.
All right. We will close the public hearing at 7:09. Planning Commission discussion?
I think it's pretty straightforward, just bringing it in, annexing, it'll clean up the area, and as Stacy just mentioned, it will allow the town to have some supervision on that retention pond, so I'm in favor of it.
Yep, I agree.
I am as well.
I agree as well.
I concur with my fellow commissioners.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. It'll address our community members' concern about the maintenance of it, and so I think that's a positive thing. If there's no further discussion, do we have a motion?
I move the planning commission recommend the town council approve the tracks A and C Cottonwood subdivision filing number 11 rezoning to Cottonwood Highlands PD as open space.
I second.
It's been moved by John, seconded by Rob, that Planning Commission recommend that town council approve the tracks A and C Cottonwood subdivision filing number 11 rezoning to Cottonwood Highlands PD as open space. All those in favor say yes.
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 Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. All right, item number 8 is a public hearing, Bradbury Ranch Plan Development Fourth Amendment rezone, planning case number Z16-028. We will open the public hearing at 7:10. And we will call upon the town's attorney to give us some background.
Good evening, Chairman Poole and Planning Commission members. My role tonight as the town's attorney is to discuss town standards related to the public hearing concerning the rezoning application for the Bradbury Ranch Plan Development. The role of the Planning Commission is to conduct a public hearing for the purpose of providing a recommendation to the Town Council on this zoning application. The criteria for rezoning are contained in Section 1304-240 of the Parker Municipal Code. Under this section of the code, the Planning Commission shall consider the following factors, and there's 9 of them. The first is a need exists for the proposal. The second is that the particular parcel of land is indeed the correct site for the proposal. The third is that there has been an error in the original zoning, or, and this is in the alternative, and I think this is the criteria that you'll actually focus on, there's been a significant change in the area to warrant a change in the zoning. The fifth is that there's adequate circulation and that traffic movement will not be impeded by this development. The sixth is that additional municipal services costs will not be incurred, which the town is not prepared to meet. The seventh is that there is minimal environmental impacts or that the impacts can be mitigated. The eighth is that the proposal is consistent with the town master plan, maps, goals, and policies. And finally, the ninth is that there's adequate waste and sewage disposal, water, schools, parks and recreation, and other services to the proportional degree necessary due to the impacts created by the proposed use. So tonight, during the public hearing, the Planning Commission will determine whether the factors I have just read into the record have been met, based upon the information that is provided during the public hearing by town staff, which will start the process after I'm done, the applicant, and the public. Following the public hearing, the Planning Commission is authorized to make one of the following recommendations to Town Council. So you are not the final decision maker, you make a recommendation to the town council. There are 3 possible recommendations. The first is approve the application without conditions. The second is to conditionally approve the application, indicating for the record what conditions will be attached to your approval. And the third is deny the application. If you deny the application, you have to indicate for the record the reasons supporting your denial. So in your packet tonight, you have a very detailed staff report that has been prepared. So please note that the town staff report for the application contains information that supports a finding that the factors that I've just read into the record have been satisfied. As a result, there is some competent evidence in the record contained in the staff report that you could approve or approve with conditions. However, and I stress however, if you hear evidence tonight that does not support the approval of the application because one or more of the factors that I have read into the record are not satisfied, the Planning Commission may recommend denial of the application. If the Planning Commission decides to recommend denial of the application, then the town code requires the Planning Commission to indicate the reasons for the denial. If the Planning Commission recommends denial of the application, I suggest, as a part of the motion to deny, that the Planning Commission direct me to prepare a written order to support the Planning Commission's decision to recommend denial of the rezoning application to be considered by the Planning Commission at your next regular meeting, which I believe is on the 24th of this month. Chairman Poole or Planning Commission members, do you have any questions concerning my opening remarks?
I do not.
No.
Just to clarify, though, the evidence that we hear needs to relate to the criteria outlined, correct?
That is correct. It needs to be related to this specific rezoning application and the 9 criteria that I've just read into the record.
Okay,
Okay?
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. We will move on to Ryan and Paul.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman Poole, and good evening, Planning Commissioners. This is the Planning Commission public hearing to consider the Fourth Amendment to the Bradbury Ranch Development Plan and Guide. The applicant is Mitch Trevey from Trevey Land and Commercial, and the property owner is Cornerstone Associates LLC, representing Cornerstone as Bobby Joe Lucas. Both of them are present this evening and have a presentation following my presentation. The property that is the subject of tonight's public hearing is shown in yellow on this slide. It is on the southwest corner of the 4-lane arterial of Jordan Road and Cedar Gulch Parkway and is 5.232 acres. The site is currently vacant and undeveloped land consisting of native grasses. To the west of the subject parcel is existing 2- and 3-unit single-family attached residences. To the north is an undeveloped parcel zoned Bradbury PD neighborhood commercial. To the south is single-family detached residences. And to the east are detached and attached single-family residential. This slide illustrates the applicant's proposal. The image on the left is the existing zoning, and the image on the right is the proposed zoning. The applicant proposes to revise the zoning on the parcel from Bradbury Ranch PD, Planning Area 7B, Neighborhood Commercial, to Bradbury Ranch PD, Planning Area 13, Senior Housing. This property has been zoned for both commercial and residential uses since its annexation in 1987. Since 2000, it has been zoned to allow for commercial uses only. In 2008, the town processed an application for rezoning this parcel to reintroduce residential uses as a use by special review within Planning Area 7B. Town Council denied that request. So the parcel remains zoned neighborhood commercial today and allows a variety of commercial retail and commercial service establishments as a use by right. To clarify, this rezoning only allows attached and detached single-family and/or multifamily senior housing as defined by the Town of Parker Land Development Ordinance as a permitted use on the subject parcel, with a 1-acre park on the south side of the property. It is shown in green on the slide to the right. No additional permitted uses or uses by special review will be allowed in Planning Area 13 senior housing. So what is senior housing? Parker's definition of senior housing is taken straight from federal law and is defined as any housing provided under state or federal program determined by the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to be specifically designed and operated to assist elderly persons, or intended for and solely occupied by persons 62 years of age or older, or intended and operated for occupancies by persons 55 years of age or older with restrictions. And as with every rezoning request, the Town of Parker Land Development Ordinance specifies 9 criteria to be used in evaluating that request, as mentioned by Mr. Maloney. If the proposal meets the 9 criteria or can meet them subject to reasonable mitigation conditions, the rezoning may be approved. The Planning Commission staff report, which was distributed to planning commissioners and posted on the Town of Parker website, provides a detailed staff analysis and findings to these 9 criteria. Staff has determined that all 9 criteria have been met with this proposal. So the slides that follow don't necessarily address the approval criteria in order, nor do they address the criteria in detail like the staff report. So staff, my presentation has been pared down for brevity purposes. So one of the criteria is that the rezoning proposal be consistent with the Town of Parker's master plan maps, goals, and policies. The master plan also makes several references to providing housing for Douglas County's aging demographic to stay in Parker, as well as provide housing opportunities for seniors to live close to their families currently living in Parker. The statements that you see on this slide are taken directly from Parker's master plan and support senior housing. The first, provide housing for our aging demographic and allowing them to stay in our community, is important to the town. No matter where our residents are in their life cycle, whether young adult or senior citizen on a fixed income, it is the town's best interest to accommodate this wide range of needs by providing an adequate housing mix and continue to encourage the development of a full range of senior housing. Based on the analysis provided in the staff report and the specific language from the town master plan, staff finds that the proposal to rezone the parcel from neighborhood commercial to senior housing is consistent with the Town of Parker master plan. Another criteria that staff analyzes is that a need exists for this proposal. So the graph shown on this slide is from the U.S. Census Bureau and Colorado Demography Office and is entitled Colorado's Actual and Projected Senior Population. It starts at 2007 and goes up to 2040, whereby seniors will make up almost 20% of Colorado's age demographic. And Colorado isn't different from any other state from national trends towards this trend. Excuse me. Staff looked at U.S. Census Bureau bar charts on current and future projections of senior population and found that those graphs were similar to this one. Locally, our master plan also recognizes this. Again, the quote that you see on this slide above the graph was pulled directly from the master plan and recognizes that Douglas County will see one of the highest percentage increases in people over age 65. And not only are our residents choosing to age in place, additional older adults are attracted to the area to be near family. Providing housing for our aging demographic and allowing them to stay in our community is important to the town. So based on the analysis summarized again above and in the staff report, staff does find that a need exists to provide a variety of senior housing opportunities for senior citizens that integrates into existing neighborhoods and supports flexibility, mobility, independent living, and services for the elderly. Another criteria that staff analyzed is that this particular piece of ground is the correct site for this development. The Town of Parker 2035 General Land Use Map identifies the intersection and surrounding areas of Main Street and Jordan Road as a neighborhood center, which is denoted with a red star shown on this slide. The master plan states higher density residential is appropriate in these centers as a transition between less intense residential areas and non-residential areas when developed as part of a mixed-use development and when the design encourages residents to walk or bicycle to obtain goods and services. The proposal to rezone the parcel to senior housing will provide an opportunity to create an appropriate graduation of land use intensities between the existing less intense residential areas to the west and south of this parcel and the existing developed and undeveloped commercial properties to the northeast and north of this parcel. With the 1 acre park required on the south side of the property, there is also a buffer between the existing residential uses to the south and the anticipated development. The Town of Parker 2035 Master Plan also consists of the following strategy statement. Seek opportunities to locate housing for those citizens with special needs near transportation services that will make their mobility easier. The proposal to rezone this parcel to permit senior housing within walking distance of the RTD Route 483 bus stop, denoted with a yellow star, will provide senior citizens with an option to access convenient transportation and mobility services. So based on the analysis outlined above, staff finds that this particular piece of ground will provide an appropriate transition between less intense residential areas and non-residential areas, and will encourage senior citizens to walk or bicycle to obtain goods and services. Staff also finds that this particular piece of ground is within walking distance of the RTD bus route 483, which will provide senior citizens with a needed and convenient transportation service. Staff does find that this particular piece of ground is indeed the correct site for this proposed development. So criteria 3 and 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 9. Staff did find that all of those criteria are met. I didn't discuss them in detail in my presentation, but they are in the staff report. My detailed analysis is in that, and staff has determined that all 9 of these criteria have been met. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend that the Town Council approve the Bradbury Ranch PD Fourth Amendment rezoning request to senior housing. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions from planning commissioners. Remember, the applicant and the property owner do have a presentation and conclusion of mine. Thank you.
Questions for Ryan?
Ryan, to meet the needs, not only this area, are there other needs in the western portion of Parker for additional senior housing? In the report, it said that this is the only particular site available in the west side of Parker. Are there other sites that would be available or are available? Or either this need or,
Sure.
or future need?
Sure. I don't know if staff said that comment, Commissioner Howe, but that may have been the applicant's response. But I think senior housing, just generally speaking, will be a need moving into the future. Yes. And we're seeing that with.
But at this point, you don't know of any other sites that are available in the western part?
I do not, no.
Ryan, I have a question. So if this is approved as for senior housing, and if the applicant, for some reason, were to withdraw, could somebody or another applicant come along and try to get it rezoned for multifamily, such as apartments?
Anyone can come in and file an application for a rezone. It wouldn't be analyzed, Commissioner Forrester, against the same criteria. It would be a different analysis. Senior housing, the master plan makes specific references to senior housing and exceptions for senior housing. If the applicant were to come in and do a rezone for multifamily, or anyone for that matter for multifamily, it would be another rezoning process. We would go through Planning Commission and Town Council public hearings for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
One more question. I know in the handout or the packet we have, it references this as a neighborhood commercial area.
That's correct.
But there's one place in here that is on page 11, item number 8, where the applicant is saying that it's currently identified as a neighborhood residential. But that has not been changed yet, right? It's neighborhood commercial still until it's approved for residential, right?
That is correct. It's zoned neighborhood commercial right now with no residential use is permitted as a use by right or use by special review.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Ryan, just to clarify, the federal law on senior housing, which is incorporated into the town's statute, this is age restricted. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right. Does the applicant want to step forward, make the presentation? Please state your name and address for the record.
Mitch Trevy Land and Commercial, 10510 Dransfeld Road, Parker, Colorado. Thank you, Commissioner and members of the Planning Commission, for your time and consideration for this application. Also must give thanks to Ryan McGee and Bryce Matthews for their efforts in working with us over almost the last year, I believe, right? And also to Paul Workman and Jason Rogers for their assistance as well. Ryan has a PowerPoint presentation. Some of the information that's in there actually is a little bit redundant, but we'll just kind of go through that. Some of those are facts and some are talking points. As far as the property goes, I think Ryan identified pretty much where that is. You can see what the surrounding uses are, and Ryan did a good job of that. Of particular note is to the immediate west of the property in the Auburn Hills subdivision is a property that's zoned cluster residential. So that's about as close to the density it is that we're looking at as you can get. So you can move forward, right? So the property itself, the current uses permitted by right under neighborhood commercial include fast food and drive-throughs, strip retail, restaurants, bars, 24-hour uses. Also commercial recreation use such as boondocks, public and private membership clubs like Lifetime Fitness, institutional facilities like Morningstar, as well as office buildings. It should be of particular note that all of those uses by right that are currently available do not have to go through a public hearing, and they would all be allowed to be built to 45 feet in height. There's been limited demand for commercial retail on this particular parcel. Neither this parcel or the 5-acre piece immediately to the north are really large enough for any kind of a grocery anchored center. We've had regular inquiries on the parcel to the north, as well as some activity to the south, but none for retail uses. And the primary reason is because there's no direct access on Main Street or on Jordan Road. All access is internal to those lots, and typically retailers, they want to be able to drop in right off of Main Street or right off of Jordan. So neither one of those parcels has seen any commercial development or retail activity. The other thing that's emerged is that to the south, down at Hess Road and Jordan Road, there's some planned commercial development. So some of the larger commercial developers are starting to look down there and actually look past this intersection. So you can advance again, right? Thank you. Parker in general, I don't think it's any secret that our growth is obvious and everybody's a little bit concerned. Residential rooftops pretty much drive everything: commercial, retail, office, employment, schools, parks. So it's all about the rooftops. Single-family homes still dominate the housing market, 75% of all of our new home sales. But entry-level or attainable housing is pretty much non-existent in Parker. It's kind of known that you have to be able to afford to live here. Multifamily apartments, however, have emerged pretty strongly, and they've created some major concerns, which we've all experienced, especially over the last 2 years. But senior housing of any type still remains in short supply. So what we learned about senior housing during this process, it's pretty interesting. There's been no real historic long-range planning for senior housing in particular in Parker. Most master plan communities like Bradbury Ranch and even Canterbury and Stroh Ranch, they never really identified any specific areas that were designated for senior housing in the long haul. Typically, senior housing has had to come in and find its way into either property zoned multifamily or in a parcel like this that was not zoned for it in the first place. Single-family homes, retail centers, sitting on the corners, schools for our kids, parks, trails, those were all provided in most of these master plan communities, but there wasn't any real designation for senior housing. And the senior population in Parker continues to grow rapidly. I think everybody can see that. It's just like everywhere in our nation, as was pointed out by Ryan. Long-term residents in Parker, they want to stay and age in the community, as Ryan mentioned, per the master plan. And in-migration of seniors in Parker has also been ongoing for years and continues to go on. I think a lot of us have experienced that to where that there might be an aging parent or parents that are either widowed or looking to come and live closer to their families. in Parker, and we end up accommodating them in their basements because they don't really have an opportunity for affordable housing as seniors, so they can be close to their families. So the question is, where are the sensible locations for our seniors within our own neighborhoods, and are they even welcome in those neighborhoods, or do we continue to develop projects for them that sit on the perimeter up on 470 or outside of our planned community where they're disconnected and not really in our community? So hopefully future master plans, as other communities develop, can accommodate specific areas for seniors. We had 2 different neighborhood meetings with the neighbors in Auburn Hills, and we conducted one of those on February 21st and one on April 19th at the elementary school just a couple of blocks away. We were grateful to the owners' associations for distributing those invitations. There was probably about 300 of those that went out, and there was probably 60 to 70 folks that showed up at the first meeting, and then at the second meeting there was close to 90. And there were some major concerns. Those were voiced pretty clearly. And you know, very passionately by some of the neighbors. The number one concern when we presented the concept was the impact to the property values by low-income housing, and also the low-income neighbors living in the neighborhood, crime that would be associated with lower-income residents, the height and the design of the building. We had originally proposed a 3-story project. The density of the proposed development, as well as the increased traffic and parking demands on the streets, the long-range ownership of the project and the maintenance and the sustained quality of it, what it's going to look like in the long haul. And then one of the final questions was, you know, why should the project go here and why can't it go somewhere else? So at the second meeting, we came back and addressed some of those concerns. Second meeting was you know, much less contentious, and we had a respectful conversation with regard to some of the questions that they came up with. So with regard to the impact on property values by low-income housing, we needed to help make the distinction between you know, government-built or government-provided low-income or no-income housing for homeless, and help the neighbors understand that this is senior housing. So it's not Section 8, and it's not going to be like the projects, because we understood that many of the neighbors and the homeowners, they didn't want to see a government subsidized, you know, no-income housing project next door. We agree that would have an impact on property values, but this is senior housing. So this project would be built to Parker's new high-quality standards, which are being implemented for all multifamily projects. And the design and the materials now required would be more of at a condominium level, so you would see a much higher quality product. The project itself would be privately owned, operated, and managed, so it wouldn't be something that was left to manage itself or fall into disrepair. There would be no outward appearance that the rental rates that the seniors were paying in there would be anything other than the market rate, so there wouldn't be any indication based on the construction quality or the maintenance of the project. So we didn't anticipate that there would be any greater impact on property value than a condominium would provide. Thank you, Ryan. So as far as low-income neighbors living in the neighborhood, again, we needed to make a distinction. These weren't unemployed or underemployed or homeless or people looking for free housing to be handed to them. These are our seniors who could afford to pay rent. It's just a question of what level of rent they could pay because they're on a limited income. And so the income and status of residents would be verified annually by the operator, which would be Cornerstone. There's no children and only occasional guests of residents. There wouldn't be homeless or indigent people roaming the streets in Auburn Hills. These would be our seniors. And there's some residents that are currently living in the basements in the home of the community that could very well find themselves as residents here. As far as crime associated with lower income residents, we understand that typically housing projects do bring on some crime, but these lower income residents are on fixed income and there are seniors. They don't have children, and typically senior housing brings along probably the lowest crime generation in our society. There would be controlled access to all guests, including family members, so there's no reason to believe that crime would follow the seniors into this development. The height and the design of the building was also a concern. At our initial public meeting, we generated some presentation boards on easels, and they showed a conceptual design of what the building would look like. And initially, we had proposed a 3-story project. Neighbors were not too excited about that. They wanted to see 2 stories if we could. So when we came back on the second neighborhood meeting, indeed, we had redesigned the project to reflect a two-story design. So architecture and materials were upgraded based on our conversation with the town and their upcoming standards for multifamily construction, introducing more stone, more stucco, more timber, and much less siding, if any. So the developer obviously is willing to work with the neighbors and with the town with regard to the design and the materials and the colors on the project. The density of the proposed development, we're coming in looking for 72 units for the whole project, which is a density of 13.8 per acre. The adjacent planting area that I pointed out on that initial slide immediately to the west is at 12.3 units to the acre, so not that great of an increase. Typically apartment projects, those are going to be 18 to 30 units per acre, so this is much lower than that threshold. So the proposed density is more along the lines of condos or townhomes. The increased traffic and parking demand on the streets, of course, staff found that there wouldn't be any, but during this process, of course, we had to introduce a traffic study, a compliance letter, and we found that there would be no increase, very minimal, less intensive than commercial for sure. Access to these parcels, as I indicated earlier, is not off of Main Street, not off of Jordan, potentially off of Cedar Gulch Parkway, but this particular project is looking at access off of Auburn Hills Drive. So there would be a minimal amount of traffic coming in. I mean, if you've got seniors in there, evening and nighttime traffic would be almost non-existent. And many of the seniors would not even own vehicles, so you probably wouldn't see them coming and going much or heading to jobs at peak traffic times. Parking itself would be adequate and provided on-site, so there wouldn't be any on-street parking necessary at all. As far as the long-range ownership and maintenance, the sustained quality of the project, Cornerstone would continue to own and operate the facility. They have yet to sell a project. They were a senior housing provider, and so they build the project, they maintain ownership for forever. On-site management would be a part of the operational plan. So unlike projects or other subsidized housing, there would be somebody on-site all the time to monitor not only who's coming and going, but the security as well as the maintenance. So it's going to be an expensive project, and it's going to be well-maintained and well-preserved. So an attractive design, some good quality materials, and solid maintenance, that would support sustainability. Finally, one of the questions that the neighbors asked was, okay, so why should this project go here, and why can't you put it somewhere else? Basically, why is this thing needed in our community? Well, what we identified is this is not only a great location within a neighborhood that already has aging residents and family, but this has good access to public transportation, as Ryan indicated. And it would be the only senior housing location along the Jordan Road corridor and the only one west of Cherry Creek. So if you look at Parker, certainly we've got some senior housing opportunities along Dransfeld and up towards Parker Adventist Hospital, but nothing west of the creek, nothing on the Jordan Road corridor, and we've got a lot of population on the west side that we believe has seniors embedded in that would support that. So it's not a prime retail corner, so we're not using up prime retail ground. I mean, if it's been vacant since it was created or platted or zoned, and there's been no commercial activity, I think the market speaks to that. And in fact, it's supported by the town's master plan, as Ryan reiterated more than once. The support from the town of Parker was kind of centered around the master plan, as Ryan stressed. And he even read that same quote that we put in there. I apologize, our presentation was created independently of Ryan's, so there's a little redundancy in here. But we will see one of the highest increases in people over 65. And one of the goals there is to make sure that residents can age in place, and those additional older adults that are attracted to the area to be near their families do in fact have accommodations. So we noticed that in the master plan, there's a clearly stated goal, and that's to encourage the increased availability and integration of a variety of housing that supports flexibility, mobility, independent living, and services for the elderly and those with special needs. The strategy to implement that goal is to continue to encourage the development of a full range of senior housing and to integrate that senior housing into neighborhoods to promote opportunities for intergenerational connections and a continuum of care. So that kind of spells out what it is that we're trying to get done. So as far as the ordinance goes, and I think there was a reference made to that, Ryan, in the staff report, and I'm not sure that some of the public understands, but certainly you do because it came before you. The town itself recently passed an ordinance that defines what senior housing is. And so the definition of senior housing, as Ryan touched on in his slide, is now in the land development ordinance by definition, and this project is designed to adhere to that. So I don't think we need to read through that. Ryan, you already went over that. So who is Cornerstone, and what kind of a neighbor would they be to the folks in Auburn Hills? They're a privately held senior housing provider, and they're based in Omaha, Nebraska. They've got 16 projects in Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Wyoming, and Colorado. 14 are operational, 2 are under construction. They currently have 3 fully occupied projects in Colorado, 2 in the Springs, 1 up in Fort Collins. They work with the local governments and the aging councils to deliver on senior housing. They do utilize state and federal incentives under the CHAFA program to offer lower rents on good quality housing. They own and operate all their own facilities and have on-site management, as I mentioned earlier. And they participate with the local communities and the senior groups to increase the quality of life for our seniors. So what would that project look like? That's something that the neighbors were very interested in, and we illustrated that. We've got some concept plans we'll share here in a moment. But we went with a 2-story project with an attractive building design, some good high-quality construction with considerable stone and stucco materials, beautifully designed and well-maintained landscaping, 50% open space, and then one of the town's requirements was that we actually reserve by this rezoning a 1-acre parkland or park section on the south of the property, and Ryan showed that on one of his slides. Abundant on-site parking for residents, staff, and visitors. Some of that's covered, some of it's screened. A well thought out and planned project that's connected well to the neighborhood, and a conceptual design that's it was well received by the town and by numerous residents. So in looking at the way that, that we were proposing that, and understand that this is just a conceptual plan, we've got both the entrances on Auburn Hills Drive. You can see the vast amount of open space and green area, which constitutes actually 51%, I believe. And then the park area to the south, which includes some tree plantings. So that provides that buffer to the single-family residential to the south. So that's an aerial view to give you an idea what that project would look like. And then from the street, this is the view from Jordan Road, and you can see that that's a 2-story structure, and they look more like condominiums and more like higher-end apartments than they do any kind of subsidized or low rent or low income housing. So pretty nice looking project. The building heights below 35 feet, just like everything in the neighborhood, 2-story max, so very similar to some of the homes in the neighborhood. And then the other view from Auburn Hills Drive, that's looking to the northeast from the southwest. That's pretty much what the neighbors would see from within the neighborhood as they pulled out. So you can see some of the parking there is in covered parking structures on the south, and on the aerial you probably saw that there's some of that provided on the north. So those are some of the conceptual plans. Keep in mind that the final site plan approval and the building permit, as you know, are still subject to approval. That's not a part of what this rezone is. Those will go through in a separate process. Design and construction would comply with the town of Parker's 2018 multifamily standards, which are overhauled now to really increase the quality of materials. Estimated cost of construction is over $17 million and over $200,000 a unit. The average age of residents in other Colorado Cornerstone facilities is between 60 and 65 years of age. So the maximum income of residents under the program is limited. One person can't earn more than $35,000, 2 people, 40, 3, 45, and 4 at 53. Keep in mind that those are combined totals. So it's not like you can have more than one person in a unit earning $35,000. So that's combined income per unit, if you will. Monthly rental rates for each unit, 1-bedroom units would range from $470 a month to $825. 2-bedroom units at $575 to $900. Occupancy would be limited to 1 couple per room. And the average length of occupancy is typically 2 to 7 years. We did the research within Cornerstone, and they said that typically the amount of time that they have a tenant in the same unit is between 2 and 7 years. Keep in mind that they need to be screened to qualify on the way in, and then they have to re-qualify every year to stay there. So units are inspected quarterly for maintenance as well as for policy violations. So it's a pretty well-managed project. So in conclusion, we believe that the rezoning request for senior housing is good because it's not low-income housing. It's not for the homeless or the unemployed or the underemployed families, as I indicated earlier. We've worked closely with the town and the neighbors in this process. It's going to be built to the highest possible construction standards that we've ever seen in Parker. It adheres strictly to the town's definition of senior housing under the new ordinance passed, and the zoning is in compliance and supported by the master plan, as we've both reiterated. It does fit well into the neighborhood. It does not look out of place. It'll be owned and operated by a reputable and proven senior housing provider. The senior community in Parker is definitely in need of this housing opportunity. We do understand and respect that there continues to be opposition to low-income housing in Parker. Whether it's directed at this project or at others, we still don't consider this low-income housing. This is senior housing. And with that, we request respectfully your support and approval from our Planning Commission. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Trevey?
Yes,
Well, I got Mitch, sorry. You said they can have up to 4 parties in a 2-bedroom unit. What's the average that Cornerstone has? How many parties live in each unit? What's the average?
I'm going to bring Bobby Jo Lucas up here. She's the president from Cornerstone, and she can speak to some of the specific details with regard to operations and occupancy of their projects.
Thank you, Commissioner, and all remaining commissioners. I apologize. Bobby Lucas, Cornerstone Associates, Omaha, Nebraska. Generally, we find that there are no more than 2 that even live in a 2-bedroom apartment. More often than not, it seems to be a single person that chooses a 2-bedroom apartment because of downsizing generally, that they like the additional space. Very rarely do we have 3 people in a 2-bedroom, and the only time that we would have a need for that if there was someone that required a caregiver, and then more often than not, the caregiver would live in the second apartment. But as many of us know, as we age, generally we like to have our own space, and so more often than not, a family, a husband and wife, the wife may have 1 bedroom and the husband may have a second. So I can't even tell you, probably less than maybe 5 that I know that a caregiver even lives in the property.
I have one other question too on the traffic issue. There's a elementary school on the corner of Auburn Hills Drive and Bradbury Ranch Parkway. And if that's going to be the main access during the daytime, that whole area is fairly congested with traffic and children going to school. Do these people, I assume many of the people who live there will be working and leaving to go to the only signal light access, which is at Bradbury and Main Street? So they'll be going by the school and by the children?
I would absolutely speak to that. Historically, through all the properties that we own, we find that more often than not, we have very few residents who do work, and those that do get out into the traffic are not within the peak times of school time or rush hour, whether in the morning or late in the evening. We find that most of our residents either A, don't have cars, or those that rely on transportation may carpool with someone who does have something, and they don't want to be out in the traffic. They have the luxury of their own time.
Robert, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Trevey, in the 2-story configuration that you're promoting here, what is the height, the maximum height of that structure?
Well, the height proposed within the senior housing amendment to the PD is 35 feet, just like the residential component across the street, so no higher than if this was residential and there were 2-story homes being built.
Okay, so we'll be at the maximum 35-foot?
Correct.
Okay. That's still a bit less than the 45-foot maximum allowed under its current
It is,
zoning.
and you know, in part of helping to demonstrate to the neighbors what this could be and what it is that we're planning, we help them understand that, okay, this could be like looking at the back of a Best Buy or a Lifetime or something else that does tower to 45 feet. So we believe that not only is this, and when we proposed the 3-story project, that was one of their biggest concerns, like, hey, that is just way too tall for a neighborhood, so can you bring that down? And we did. It took a little bit of engineering and work to do, but that's what we did. And to speak additionally to the comment on traffic as that may pertain to the elementary school and those times, if this was going to get developed commercially, we would see much greater impact to those existing traffic patterns. So this is pretty low impact as far as the traffic that does come and go.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. And you may have covered some of these, but not in real detail. When was a traffic study conducted and by who? How long ago?
That's, it should be in the packet. I think that was done in, what, November of 16? Ryan? I have to pull that out. I didn't bring my full,
How long ago was the traffic study conducted, and
It was
by who?
Completed in 2000, in the year 2000. The update, yeah, was 2016.
2016?
it was October of 16, if I'm not
Okay, so about a year ago.
Mhm.
In these units, are in the complex, is there going to be a kitchen or cafeteria, or is each unit going to have their own kitchen?
Well, each units are their own homes. They all have all of the modern energy-efficient appliances, microwave, dishwasher, disposal, refrigerator, stove with oven, and we also include washer and dryers. The building itself has a community dining room, which we label that as a serving kitchen because we do not provide meals. There will not be a stove in there. There is, however, a microwave, a refrigerator, and a sink. Generally, it's used for gatherings, for residents who choose to have potlucks, or if they want to use that room for when their family members come and have meals.
Okay. One more question about the parking and the garages. I noticed in the illustration, it looked like the garages were in the back part of the building, or on the side. And if they are, is there going to be a buffer between the garages and the homes behind there? Is that where the 1 acre park will go?
Yeah, we've pulled that image back up, thank you, Wayne, to illustrate where the covered parking, not really garages, it's doubtful that the seniors will be out there working on their cars, but yeah, the covered parking on the south end, that is buffered by that 1 acre park space and the increased vegetation as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Ileana?
I have a couple of questions. You're going to have 72 units in total. How many open parking spaces and how many garages are you planning for?
I have to count them up.
There are 24 garages, and I don't have the site plan in front of me, but I know that we exceed what the minimum requirement is for parking spaces.
That are uncovered?
I'm sorry?
They're just uncovered?
Yes.
Okay. And then I commend, by the way, your price point according to affordability. That's a great thing. The other question or the comment made was you have staff hours. Is that purely maintenance staff, or is that actually staff that will help someone if they need help, or what does that entail?
This is independent living. We will have on-site manager and maintenance during the normal hours of 8 to 6. However, both are on call at any point in time.
Okay.
So it is not 24 hours. They are not there for 24 hours.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the applicant?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Ryan?
Nope.
Okay.
Just one point of clarification. Commissioner Howe had asked if there are sites available west of this site for senior housing. And there are sites available for multifamily housing. If I understood your question correctly, Commissioner Howe, there are sites available west of here for multifamily housing.
Yeah, the reason I asked was based on what you have said and what's in the report is there's a high need for this, and this wouldn't meet the need. It'll be a start, but it won't meet the need for
That's
the
correct.
future that you're talking about.
That's correct.
Okay, the next, as this is a public hearing, we will open the discussion to public comment. I think it's important that while everyone may feel a certain level of passion, we need to be respectful of each other and our members in the audience, and also respectful of time. It's getting on towards 8 o'clock. And to kind of expedite this, we ask that you hold your remarks to 3 minutes. Our clock on the wall is not working. Oh, it is working now? Okay, so we got it working. And we were trying to get that ready to go. We ask that you hold to 3 minutes, and we'll try and respectfully hold everybody to that, and that you try not to repeat the same thing somebody else has already said. And to also expedite it, I'm going to call about 3 or 4 names in advance, and you can kind of line up over here along the side and then come up to the podium, and that'll speed things up a little bit. And I will tell you in advance, I will try to read everybody's handwriting and pronounce their names correctly, but if you've ever been in a position to have to pronounce lots of names, they don't always come out the way you think they should, and it's no disrespect, it's just doing the best I can. We'll start, Artie Lell is the first speaker, and then if Ben Taylor could line up, and Diane Leversley, Janet Benedict, and Kathy and Art Lyle. If they could just kind of line up over there, and we'll, just kind of, Mr. Rogers will kind of show you where, and then I'll call some more people here in a minute. Mr. Lyle, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Artie Lale. I live at 4483 Juniper Court in Larkspur, Colorado. I am the programs manager with the Douglas County Housing Partnership. That's the county and the town of Parker's housing authority. And I'm here to speak in favor of this proposed rezone and new development for a number of reasons. And I know there's a lot of opinions in the room, so I'm just going to give my personal perspective as a programs manager. One of my jobs is to see seniors through reverse mortgage counseling, through foreclosure mitigation counseling, through home purchase counseling. We also help them out with rental assistance in terms of trying to find rental units that they can rent. That challenge is daunting in this day and age, particularly in this county, and even here in Parker. Parker's extremely expensive, even now. And regardless of the quote-unquote glut of multifamily that's being built, seniors don't have really many options. Roughly a third of the folks I see that come in for reverse mortgage counseling don't really qualify for the reverse mortgage. They don't have enough equity, they can't get the loan, and they're not going to be able to age in place in their home. And we do see about 30% of my clientele come from the town of Parker in that particular counseling section. What they need is a way to age in place and to downsize. And unfortunately, condo prices in the town of Parker are such that even if they sold the homes that they have, they're not going to have enough equity generated to be able to buy and downsize. Downsizing is almost more expensive than trying to hold on to what you've got. So there needs to be more options for these folks to be able to remain in the community and not feel forced out or forced to move to some other side of town. For a lot of my clients, they've lived here almost their entire lives, 30, 40 years. And so it's extremely important that we develop new options and new alternatives for our senior community. I'll yield the rest of my time to the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyle. Next, Ben Taylor.
Commissioner and Chairman and Commissioners of the Planning Commission. I'm here today to voice my, Ben Taylor, 2321 Champa Street, Denver, Colorado. I'm here today to voice my support for this project. I work in the affordable housing industry, and I would specifically like to address the criteria of a need exists. I work in Colorado and across the country with affordable senior housing, and staff's presentation today couldn't be more true. The need we see in all of our projects and the developments specifically here in Colorado are, to say it literally, outrageous. And to prove that, by way of example, I urge anyone here to contact an affordable housing senior project in the South Metro and ask them if they can get on the waiting list, because that's all that exists. As you saw, that need is only going to increase, and I strongly believe that there's a shortage here in Parker, and that the town and the current residents will greatly benefit from this project. I hope the Planning Commission provides a recommendation for approval on this proposed rezoning, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Diane?
Hi, I'm Diane Leavesley. My address is 8924 Thunderbird Road, Parker, Colorado. I am also in support of this project, and I am also the executive director of the Douglas County Housing Partnership. Every day, literally, I get calls from seniors in our county who are looking for a safe place to live that they can afford. The stories that I get are, I've been living here all my life and my rent's just been raised $500 this month. What am I going to do? I have, the other things that I hear are, I'm trying to live closer to my children, and I can't find a place to live. We currently have 2 other properties in the county that are similar to this, Auburn Ridge and Oakwood Apartments in Castle Rock, both with waiting lists. The Auburn Ridge waiting list it's a property that opened in 2014, and there are 500 people on the waiting list to move in there. I hope later tonight you'll be hearing from some of the people that live there as well as work there. But what I'd like to say is my experience in working with these seniors is don't think of them as contributing at a time when they have time. They bring volunteer time to our communities. They are helping each other with rides. They are helping each other with places to volunteer and to eat together and to have social time together. And sorry, I just got distracted by the clock. And there's nothing scary about this. My experience is actually that the folks that live in our properties in the county are closer to the 70 to 80 year age, and they're still vibrant members of our community and want to continue to be. I'd also like to say that despite the fact that there's going to be people in this room who are going to say they don't want this in their neighborhood, I noted that the HOA didn't come out and say that. So you do have, a vocal group of people here who are going to say they don't like this, but their community didn't do it. It's some individuals. I really hope that you will consider sending this along to the town council. It is so needed in our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Janet Benedict, or is this Kathy and Art? Yeah.
I'm Kathy, and that's my husband, Art.
How do you do?
We live at 6818 South Duquesne Court in Aurora. We used to live in Lone Tree, and we had a townhome by Sky Ridge, and Art's mother, who is still living, was 4 years ago, we had to sell our townhome and buy a ranch out east and move her in with us. We couldn't have her in the townhome because the stairs. She, after so many years, she was 88 when we moved her in with us, and she could not afford the rent where she was living. We looked everywhere, and we could find nothing. She wanted to live independently, but we needed to keep her close. So we ended up having, and I'm 65 and he's 67, and we ended up having to sell our home where we wanted to retire, where we wanted to be, but we had to watch out for her. So we sold our home, the home we wanted, and we bought a ranch, and she could move around there, but we kept her safe. And there is no senior communities, and you're looking at seniors that are watching out for a senior. It's not just one generation of seniors. This is overwhelming. I can't even tell you how hard this is. And my heart broke for her. I knew she was unhappy. It broke for us. We were safe. We were by a hospital. We did everything we were supposed to. And so did she. She saved. She raised 4 kids. She didn't know she was going to live so long. She's 92 now. God has a plan. And, well, our plan was a little different, but we're doing our job that we should do. And Douglas County, Parker, has to help too. And maybe we could have stayed put. She could have moved in closer. She was going to be no threat to anyone. She's not poor. She just lived too long, and she did save money, but people didn't have the money at that time. And I thank you.
Thank you. Let me call some more people over here to the line. Lance Losi, Marty Pickert, Jeff M., Craig Habermike, and John Rader. Okay, Janet?
I'm impressed with the presentation. I thought it was very thorough, answered a lot of questions, but on the slide I did see one thing where they were providing services to the elderly, and I understand there's not a restaurant in this building, but I wondered what services will be provided to them.
We'll come back to that and address that once the public comment's over.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lance?
My name is Lance Losey. I live at 11568 Terrawood Court. My house is immediately south of the proposed immediately south of the parcel in question. I hold in my hand one page of a certified letter that I received in the mail approximately 2 weeks ago. I will now read to you one paragraph from that letter. The applicant is seeking to rezone the property to a newly designated land use category within the Bradbury Ranch planned development to be known as senior housing. The definition of senior housing was recently established by Ordinance 301113 of the Town of Parker on July 3, 2017, and this rezoning request is consistent with that new definition. The previously mentioned paragraph suggests that the Town of Parker created a new land use category, senior housing, specifically for the proposed rezoning of the property in question.
Okay.
This constitutes what is known as spot zoning. Spot zoning is the application of zoning to a specific parcel or parcels of land within a larger zoned area when the rezoning is usually at odds with the city's master plan and current zoning restrictions. Spot zoning may be ruled invalid as an arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable treatment of a limited parcel of land by a local zoning ordinance. While zoning regulates the land use in whole districts, spot zoning makes unjustified exceptions for a parcel or parcels within a district. In 2008, a similar rezoning proposal was unanimously rejected by the Town of Parker. I now call your attention to the June 5th, 2017 Town Council meeting. For everyone's benefit, there's a camera right there, and this meeting is being recorded on YouTube. At that Town Council meeting, at 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 0 seconds, Councilwoman Williams discussed property rights as it pertains to zoning laws. She said, in effect, that it is incumbent upon any prospective property buyer to do their homework and be informed of the zoning of any and all vacant properties in the vicinity of a potential acquisition. Prior to purchasing my home last year, which is immediately south of the property in question, I was informed that the property in question is zoned as neighborhood commercial, which allows for a wide range of commercial, office, and residential retail uses. Neighborhood commercial zoning ensures a property which has low traffic, benefits the community, and is complementary to the zoning of other vacant parcels. On that same June 5th, 2017 meeting, Mayor Wade instructed the citizens on the basics of zoning laws and said that if a piece of property is zoned commercial and someone wants to build apartments on the commercially zoned land, it is not allowed. It is against the law. The property in question was originally zoned commercial to be complementary to the surrounding neighborhood. To change the zoning of this property would constitute an instance of spot zoning because all other vacant land in the vicinity is currently zoned commercial. The previous town council rejected.
Mr. Losey.
The previous town council rejected that proposal. I would like to make one other statement, and that is I'm a member of the board of I'm a member of the HOA of which the lady spoke. I am here to represent all the members of my HOA, some of who are for the proposal and some of who are against. To make a change to the zoning would represent an illegal act by the town council. And as the planning commission, it is your responsibility to provide them the information necessary to make that decision. I call on the Parker Planning Commission to immediately and unanimously reject the proposed rezoning application on the basis that it constitutes spot zoning.
Thank you. Mr. Pickert, Marty Pickert, Miss Pickert, sorry.
Good evening. I'm Marty Pickert, 20620 Parker Vista Road. I'm an example of somebody that would like to live in this housing. And I've been hanging around Parker for 6 years now, working on one project or another, but we haven't had any luck. But this looks promising. So I'm in my 70s. I have a group of friends. Some of us are here tonight. I just wanted to say that we are professional people. We're not going to, let's see. I think some of the neighbors were concerned that the people that live in this community are going to be different than they are. But all of my friends and I, we've been professionals and we're retired professionals. Right now I live in a basement. I rent a family, with a family in Parker. But the problem with that situation is the steps going down to the basement, and also the fact that they might move. So I just think this building is going to be so beautiful that when people drive by, they won't know what it is. I think it'll look very high-end. I think it'll complement the neighborhood. I don't see any problems with the traffic. I don't see problems with the kind of people that will be living there. Thank you. I hope you give us consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jeff?
Commissioners, Jeffrey McCoy, 16641 Firebrook Drive in Parker. I wish to address the comments of the town attorney earlier. 2 of the 9 criteria to approve this I do not believe are being met. First, the land use doesn't make sense. Mr. Trevey and Ms. Lucas announced on 3 separate occasions that most residents do not have vehicles. Well, doing some basic math, it would be about a 0.4 mile walk to the RTD Routes 483 bus stop, a 1.5 mile walk to the Lincoln Station Park and Ride, and a 1.9 mile walk to the nearest grocery store. So the proximity of this senior living community is not really conducive to residents without vehicles. Secondly, it's not really consistent with the master plan either. Section 5 of the master plan writes, "We will preserve our single-family neighborhoods." And in Section 8, it reads that we will integrate senior housing as necessary to promote intergenerational connections. The problem here is that, according to public records, the 80134 zip code median income is $103,602 a year. Whereas and according to the Department of Urban and Development for the U.S. government, it says the median income in this area is about $80,100. So if you have residents coming in with a $35,000 household income, which is slightly above what we were expecting from the initial meetings, how are we going to be able to have that kind of intergenerational connections? It doesn't make sense. Moreover, the 72 units will be added represent about 4% increase from the 1919 that have previously been approved. The town itself has been saying that, we've approved 1,919 apartment units recently, so a 4% increase would be a sizable increase to that. They've really been hesitant to approve additional multifamily housing. So because of this, I do not think it's consistent with the master plan. I do not think that the community will be able to have the same kind of intergenerational connections that the master plan, especially Section 8, corresponds with. The income levels, the $35,000 for the residents versus the $103,602 for the community at large, it just doesn't result in the same kind of mesh. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Habernick? No? No, Craig? John Rader?
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is John Rader. I live at 16665 Firebrook Drive in Parker. I work in law enforcement, and my picture that I see is probably a little bit different than a lot of people in here. I currently work with a couple that lives in Boulder, and the man that I work with, his father is a convict who just recently got out of prison. He's a child molester. He's elderly. And he moved back in with my friend who I work with. This is something that we have to see that could potentially happen. Criminals get out of jail, they need housing, it's low income. Who's going to do background checks? Who's going to screen these people? Company's privately owned, and it's going to be privately owned and maintained. Just doing the math on simple figures, unsubsidized, it's going to take 262 years at $900 a month per unit for you to see an ROI. That doesn't make sense to me. That's at 0%. Parking is an issue. My neighbor who lived to the east of me just died last year. He was elderly. He was approximately 82, 83 years old, and he owned 3 cars and drove regularly. So that's an issue too. I think we need to look at the whole picture and see where this is going. My wife is the president of the HOA, also works in law enforcement, and is being represented tonight for the HOA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll call our next group of speakers up. Thomas Monahan, Doug Newton, Terry Shipley, Lindy Blackburn, and Lavinia Rathburn. Okay, Mr. Monahan, you can step forward. I'm trying to go through them in the order that I can. It's Mr. Monahan? Not here? No? Okay. Mr. Newton?
Good evening, Doug Newton, 16623 East Auburn Hills Drive. I'd like to take and digress for 15 seconds and ask the Planning Commission to put a moratorium limited on building in Parker. Parker's become the home of mega apartment houses, self-storage units, and urgent care units. I'm not in favor and I'm not against, but I do have a question for the builder. Directly across the street, if you could bring up the slide of the driveways and the streets. This one. My neighbor actually called me tonight and asked me to speak for her since she couldn't make it. She lives directly across the street from the northern driveway and is concerned that the headlights from the automobiles exiting that driveway are going to shine directly into her bedroom. So she's asked me to see if this plan can be adjusted to avoid that problem, not only for her, but the other people that live next to her on both sides. And to this young lady that sits next to me, the HOA doesn't speak for the residents. It's just a management company. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. If I could interject, Planning Commissioners, so this is a public hearing for the rezoning of the project.
Rezoning, yes.
Yeah, no site plan has been submitted for this. A minor development plat and site plan will be required if this gets approved by town council. I just want to add that in. Thank you.
Terry Shipley?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Terry Shipley. I live at 7909 Jones Road in Larkspur. I'm the Community Manager of Auburn Ridge Affordable Senior Housing in Castle Rock. And Diane had spoke and said we had over 500 people on the list, and it's actually over 600 on the list. And 20% of that list wants to live in Parker. And so I'm just here to speak for it. There is a need for it, and I'd like you to consider it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lindy Blackburn.
Good evening. I'm Lindy Blackburn, 11350 Night Heron Drive, Parker. My wife Tanny and I built and occupied our home in 2003. Staff did not ask Auburn Hills HOA for comment, and a little bit later we'll be submitting a petition signed by in excess of 143 concerned citizens in Auburn Hills and Bradbury Ranch. Parker's new definition of senior housing first highlights HUD housing, a provision which Cornerstone Associates, an out-of-state entity, have indicated that they will use to secure very favorable financing for this low-income housing project. What they don't mention is in the regulation is the development, quote, shall be made available for occupancy by very low-income elderly persons for 40 years. That means that you will be ceding local control to the federal government for 40 years, a development built by an out-of-state entity and overseen by the feds. How do you think that's going to work out? As a residential real estate agent in over 15 years, I've never had one of my buyers say the desire for the home of their dreams should be located next to a low-income housing facility. Never. The Colorado Housing Authority is a state bureaucracy that oversees low-income senior housing projects. Do you think that this out-of-county and out-of-town entity really gives a tinker's damn about the people of Parker? I don't. I asked staff, are you aware that HUD advises that managers of such projects set aside at least one unit for an on-site security professional? This recommendation is based on years of bad experiences with low-income housing. Tonight, you're being asked to approve the rezoning of a parcel of land from PA 7 Bravo to a curiously created, newly created PA 13. If approved, Cornerstone will build a low-income senior housing project that home buyers will not willingly choose to purchase homes near, is built by an out-of-state entity with no ties to the community, rent control for 40 years, and overseen by the federal government. Further overseen by the Colorado Housing Authority, no ties to our local community, no local control. I priori knowledge that low-income housing projects beget crime and other social programs. If you approve this project, that's an anathema to the reason most of us migrated to Douglas County. Small, local, non-intrusive government, individual property rights, outstanding public safety, and Parker home rule. All I can say, if we really need to, you agree to change this, we need to change the Parker moniker to Parker, a town of mind over matter. We don't mind, and what you want doesn't matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll call some more folks up here. Brian Radabin, Doug Lewis, Shannon Taskalakis, Vanessa Delgado, Robin Reynolds, and next Lavinia.
Greetings, Councilman. My name is Lavinia Rathbun. I live at 16640 Firebrick Drive. I would like to offer my full-hearted support in this project. I believe that our seniors are an integral part of this community. I live and work in this community, very near where this project would go by. I think it's shameful that the other people in my community are so against this because they have elderly relatives that could utilize this facility just as I do. I think it's incredibly important that we consider not only our elderly citizens that are on a fixed income, but also affordable housing for those that serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edward, do you have anything to add or no?
No, I just came with my wife, so
Okay.
to expedite things, I just concur with her.
Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, my name is Doug Lewis. I live at 16610 Firebrick Drive, Parker. I've lived in Parker for 22 years with my wife. We built our supposed dream home in Auburn Hills. I checked out, that was our 6th house, 4 of which have been in Parker. So we've lived all around Parker. And to have this forced upon us in an area that we thought were safe, I mean, I've already been run over by the power lines, just ran over. Cautioning people that, hey, other things can happen when those power lines come in. Sure enough, Verizon comes in. They're gonna slam a bunch of cell towers on them. We get run over again. I mean, now you're gonna attack the only thing that I have any type of equity in is my home. Let me tell you something. Just because the seniors that they're talking about, the poor seniors, believe me, I know about seniors. My father-in-law is a senior. Families should take care of their families. I'm not responsible for those seniors. I've had my father-in-law live with me for 19 years. He's an 80-year-old man. Take care of your families. It's not my problem to take care of your families for you or to pay for it. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you. Shannon?
My name is Shannon Chakalakis. I live at 11572 Terwood Court. There is a responsibility to govern the community in what we believe is the best interest of the community and in accordance to regulations of the town. Increasing the footprint of the current site plan would be in violation of the town code and master plan for Parker. The passage of the ordinance 3.01.113 to allow 3,500 square foot senior living on July 3rd shows unequivocally that the town council is not supporting the residents of Parker and are choosing to support the buyer and seller of a plot of land zoned for commercial. This is one of the many instances that support showing that the town council is attempting to do spot zoning. This plot of land is consistent with the area of commercial, and to change it would not be in the master plan, would not be harmonious historical Parker, and shows clear favoritism to an outside source to change this lot of land for special treatment. Rezoning to high-density, low-income housing is not for the betterment of the town of Parker. Rezoning to an already overexpanded intersection that has already had an increase in severe accidents resulting in an increase in traffic into Auburn Hills subdivision to avoid the intersection. With a significant increase in the traffic on Auburn Hills Drive, it cannot support successfully the increase of traffic with the already in-process apartment building less than 5 miles away. The streets are narrow. There is no traffic flow pattern that shows that it would feed into our already overcrowded neighborhood street. This clearly would put our children and residents at increased safety issues, especially by a school. It would also allow the placement of low-income housing to feed into our neighborhood parks. As the picture shows, their park feeds directly into ours and will cause our residents with an increase in our HOA dues to cover them with insurance. Also, the fear of impact for the proposed low-income complex will have on Prairie Crossing, which is already overpacked with children. Statistically, 55-year-old income families still have many active young children. We cannot change the size of the cafeteria. We cannot change the width of our hallways. We are already at capacity. Our children are already in trailers. And this is before we add an apartment complex that already approved for their children enrolled. Simply put, the design of this site is not in harmony with the neighborhood, does not have routes of communication necessary to support any type of rezoning. The design, type, use, and location of the low-income housing does not enhance the town of Parker. One of the biggest complaints that Cornerstone states is that Parker is too expensive for workers to live in, but this is a contradiction into other statements from Cornerstone. They state that a 55-year-old no longer drives, which I find offensive, and they also state that they are going to fill the location with retired seniors. If that is true, then the statement that our goal is to make it affordable workers is a lie. Which statement is true? So far in this whole process, Cornerstone has been a very aggressive developer in attempts to win favoritism to manipulate the zoning in their favor. During the few meetings at Prairie
Time,
Crossing, I have my last little thing.
Okay.
Cornerstone have supported that they have not been honest, planning people, supporters in the audience, and instigating disagreements, getting access to our neighborhood website to try to sway the residents with lies, having to redo an application that they were not truthful on, and having their staff yell and berate in condescending attitude that shows and supports that this company will do whatever they need to do to get it approved. And it also runs in line with spot zoning favoritism, which is apparent.
Thank you. Let's call a few more people up to the line here. Teresa Bardwell, Gerald Grabowski, Heather Zanoff, and Whitney Tamlin. All right, Vanessa Delgado.
All of us acknowledge the changes coming to Parker, but the proposed development is the wrong density at the wrong location at the wrong time. We as residents who make our home in Parker should feel confident in our elected officials to not accept anything from a development that would adjust their vote into a spot zoning, showing favoritism to the builder and seller. We should have faith that the zoning that is clearly labeled as commercial stay as commercial, as we all have choices to move into certain communities and purchase our homes with all that information. Every single one of us that purchase in Parker realize that these lots are commercial and have faith in our elected officials that they will honor that zoning and show their no favoritism to change fully against what the master plan states. I'm also concerned about the impact the apartment complex will have on a single-family home values. Now we see the encroaching grip of development on our doorstep again, with the town council not honoring the master plan for Parker and adjusting zoning consistently against the residents of Parker's wishes. It's not acceptable to say that the growth happens, so just deal with it. Developers and local government need to consider how small changes to their plans of Parker might alleviate or elevate the concerns of residents. Had the same project been proposed a few miles further up the road where the zoning is already in plan approved, many of these residents would be more supportive. Moreover, better planning is essential in managing whatever growth does come that way. I just think government has a responsibility to be ahead of that and not behind it. We don't let the wagon push the horse. That seems to be what is happening here. We're getting pushed around by developers wanting to make money and town councilors forgetting that the residents' desire and master plan. All of this mean-spirited attacking of folks is just not productive, and that it is not what we are here for. We are asking and begging that you uphold the master plan of Parker, do not allow special treatment spot zoning for a clearly documented lot as commercial, as supported by Williams and Mayor Mike Waite in the June 5th town council meeting. The truth is, these conversations are uncomfortable, but it needs to be said. We, the town of Parker, believe in our mayor and our town council to continue to support the master plan of Parker, not to spot zone, as would be a benefit to a certain seller or company. People are uneasy about it, and it's not supporting what is the residents of Parker want. There's been a lot on social media and in newspapers, and then there is the truth that the zoning of commercial is expected to stay commercial and not zone into our neighborhood. A significant change in the zoning would not be in the best interests of other residents in Parker. Based on these facts, I make a motion that the approval of this site be denied and seconded by the supporting members, or the supporting residents, to continue zoning as commercial.
Thank you. Robin?
Hello, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Robin Reynolds. I work at Auburn Ridge in Castle Rock with Terry. My address is 1101 Auburn Drive. I'm just here to speak to the need for affordable senior housing. One gentleman mentioned crime. We've been there 2.5 years. One of our biggest crimes was one of the residents called the police out because someone stuck their hand in the cookie jar. It's a true story. We haven't had much crime. Our residents need a place to live. Everyone here has a parent, and there's many parents out there that need affordable senior housing. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Teresa Bardwell. I live at 383 Wessex Circle, Highlands Ranch. And the reason I'm here is to support the rezoning. I've spent over 30 years in affordable housing in different facets. I developed affordable housing with Wells Fargo. I currently work for a nonprofit that develops affordable housing in rural areas in Colorado. Certainly this area is a little bit more urban, but many of the problems are the same. And now I'm currently working, training housing counseling agencies. And as Artie spoke to earlier, I have also talked to a lot of senior clients who have problems finding affordable housing. I've talked to others who are have elderly parents. Many of us have two-story houses which are not conducive to having our parents move in. And so there's a huge need for affordable senior housing out there. I wanted to quote some rental information for you. It's taken from the National Low Income Housing Coalition Out of Reach report that comes out annually. And if you look at the statistics for Colorado, a one-bedroom apartment on a fair market, or I'm sorry, a two-bedroom fair market value is $1,043. For a one-bedroom, it's $902, and I know these units are going to be looking at 1 and 2 bedroom. For Douglas County, that's $1,031 and $1,305. So we can see fair market's going to be very unaffordable for a lot of our seniors. And it's not just that they're low income. I think there may be a picture being painted here. There's a lot of really great individuals that, you know, raised their families. They didn't have the opportunities we have, and so they may not have the savings there to afford a very expensive home, but still wish to live in Parker where they either have lived or have family. And so as we look at the rental rates, you know, and the income levels that I saw on the information provided by Cornerstone and Trevi, their senior housing will allow for those who want to live in Parker, many of whom have lived here for years and have family who live here. So I do hope that you'll support the rezoning for them.
Thank you. Gerald?
Good evening. My name's Gerald Michael Grabowski. I live at 11580 Terrawood Court. I'm the original owner of that home. And again, when we bought that home, we did look at the master plan of Parker. And I closed on that home on December the 31st, 2002. What I have here is 147 signatures from the people of Auburn Hills, Bradbury Ranch, which I'd like to submit, that are unanimously opposed to this project. I think everything's been covered fairly well about how we feel, but I think you'd all be facing the same problem no matter what existing HOA covenant community you were trying to insert this project into. Canterbury would have the same problem. Idlewild would have the same problem. I'm sure they would have the same problem at the Pinery. And I would also take issue with our people from Douglas County Housing, as well as Mr. Trevi, who said there would be no significant impact on property values. I beg to differ. Every single professional realtor I have spoken to said we will take it. This is the single largest investment most of us have made. And there are quite a number of us in this community who are retired, and we do drive. My wife is in her 70s, I'm in my late 60s, we drive everywhere. And I will tell you, traffic is a problem by Prairie Crossing. It's a significant problem, and the town needs to look at it. Because right now, with the problems we have at Parker, at Main and Jordan, significant traffic is being routed into our neighborhood. With this development bouncing on to Auburn Hills Drive, or Parkway rather, you can only go eastbound onto Main Street from that. Gulch is a nightmare to get across at rush hour. Traffic is coming up Bradbury Ranch, going right by Prairie Crossing, and quite a number of people pull California stops. Our children are playing there. That's a playground. I'm retired. I watch the kids, and I watch what goes on in the neighborhood. My grandson and I were almost T-boned at Auburn Hills Drive and Cedar Gulch, because they don't stop at the stop sign. Now, we're going to dump this on. If we stay commercial, this significant amount of traffic is going to end up on Jordan or Main. That's what we were promised when we bought our properties. That's what we want to see. There's places to build this. I agree. Put it in the new developments with the new developers where the people who are buying there know what they're getting. Don't force it on us. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Heather Zanoff. I live at 16795 Firebrick Drive. I am the second house on Firebrick Drive right off of Auburn Hills. So I will look at your elevation every day. I have I have an architecture and design background. I have some issues with the elevation. If you guys want to look at the picture again, I don't know if you can go back through there. Elevation, we talk about two-story. I commend you for coming down to a two-story. However, that particular piece of land, which here you just see their property and what it's going to look like. What you don't see is that this piece of land is the tallest, the highest piece of land right there. The patio homes that are across the street from here only stick up about 8 feet above their fence line, if that. You can hardly see their homes. You can only see their roofs. So this is going to be a monolith or a large beacon saying, hey, here's some apartments. There's no neighborhood behind there. When I moved to Parker 5 years ago, this is why I moved here. It was a small town. It had amenities so I could raise my children. I grew up in Littleton. I've lived in Colorado for 35 years. I have never seen such exorbitant building all around the towns. That everywhere I've lived, I mean, yes, Littleton's grown. Highlands Ranch has grown. I know Parker's gonna grow, but I can't believe how you guys have just shoved everything into one place. I moved out here because it reminded me of when I was growing up. And now it reminds me of Denver, where I used to work. I think we need to really think about what we want Parker to look like in the future. When my kids are grown up, I don't think they're going to want to live here. They didn't want to live in the city. They wanted to live out in the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get a couple more people in line over here. Tom Skinner and Catherine Bailey. Whitney?
My name is Whitney Tomlin. I reside at 16446 Wagon Place. I am coming from this at a very different perspective, and I know that I'm at the risk of offending many of you in here. But my concern is whether or not this is the correct site. More specifically, I'm concerned about the migration to Parker. And my utmost respect to the seniors that are currently living in Parker, because I do know what a valuable contribution you make to our community. I have been an educator in Douglas County for almost 15 years. This is my 15th year. And during that time, we've tried to pass multiple mill levies and bonds unsuccessfully because they were stonewalled in Parker. While the other surrounding areas passed them, they did not pass in Parker. And this has negatively impacted our schools. We are not able to stay competitive with the neighboring districts. And as a result, it's impacted our schools. And we all know that if the schools are impacted, then property values are impacted. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Mr. Skinner?
I'm Tom Skinner, 11569 Terwood Lane, Parker, the cul-de-sac around the corner from this proposed development. Just don't know, it's my understanding there's two types of senior housing projects in Colorado. One is a 62 and older, where all occupants are 62 and older. The other, I think, is a somewhat disingenuous and deceptive senior housing project, and that is for some folks have to be 55 or older. They can have a girlfriend that's 40 or older, and their two delinquent 20-year-old kids qualify to live in the complex. And only 80% of those people have to meet that criteria. There's 20% that don't even have to meet that criteria, so that's roughly 14 units that don't have to meet that criteria. I'm 56, so assuming I had a 40-year-old girlfriend and I'm unemployed, and I drive 3 cars, about 2,000 miles a month. So, I mean, all the statistics we've heard tonight, all the concern about demographics, all the wonderful seniors we've met here tonight, they fit in this 62 or older. All occupants are 62 or older. And my wife and I originally supported a 62 and older, but we do not support this 55 deception. And I think it's a shame that the town and both the developer are throwing this deception at the citizens of Auburn Hills. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bailey? Sorry you had to wait so long.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Catherine Bailey, and I live at 16639 East Auburn Hills Drive. Almost all of my bullet points have been covered, but the one thing that I still want to address is that with is it Joanne? I'm sorry. Bobby Joe, I apologize, said about that there will be controlled access. I know a lot of us are wondering what exactly is that controlled access, especially since the on-site person will only be there from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. So what happens after that? If they have family come over, like you say, for socializing or dinners, etc. I also wanted to bring up the issue also of crime. I think Auburn Ridge is extremely lucky that the most serious crime they had was someone putting their hand in a cookie jar. But I have talked to other law enforcement people throughout Denver regarding this low-income senior housing. I know our seniors have to live somewhere. I don't wish any ill on anybody, but I don't think it's all going to be all sunshine and roses like some of the people here have described. There is still definitely crime that happens with 55 plus. Let's remember that we still do live in the state of Colorado where marijuana is legal. They have said with the low income houses, neighbors' cars are broken into, windows are broken, etc. I don't want to invite that crime in. I won't turn 55 for another 6 months, but this is something that is of grave concern to me because I purchased my home hoping and praying that it was going to be something for me to completely retire in and stay in a nice neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration. Please vote against this.
Thank you. All right, that is the last of the comment cards. And so we will close the public comment portion of the meeting. Do we need further, we got some further information coming from Ryan and the
Chair, do you want to
applicant?
just, Chair, could you confirm if there's anybody else in the audience that want to speak that didn't fill out a comment card?
Anybody that we missed with the public comment cards, or? No? Okay, thank you. Ryan, do you have comments on the questions raised?
So I'm just trying to take general. I wrote everything down here, but
right, no,
to sort through
understand.
it all. But the word spot zoning was
Yes.
used several times.
Yes.
What I heard, and this is not spot zoning in staff's view. It is senior housing is applies to all of Parker. So it's if someone wanted to do a senior housing development, for example, on another parcel. They could do that as well, and it would fall under the same senior housing definition that is in the code right now. Jim, do you want to add to that?
I think our focus is on the criteria that deals with has there been a significant change in the area as opposed to spot zoning. And so that's I think the issue before the Planning Commission members. Has there been adequate evidence or competent evidence submitted that there's been a significant change in the area to justify the rezoning application?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is staff's view that there has been a significant change in the area, as listed in the staff report, to justify to warrant the zone change for this.
Okay. And from the applicant, a couple of questions about the services provided and the controlled access. Mitch, Bobby Joe, you want to speak to that?
I don't believe anywhere in the presentation there was any mention of services provided.
Well, actually, we do provide services. I want to clarify, this
Okay.
is independent living. However, we do not provide assistance. What we provide by way of services is we schedule on a regular basis. We have nurses or accredited staff that come in and do blood pressure checks. They do review of prescriptions. They do health and nutritional screenings, a different type of services that would benefit the seniors. They inform them of any types of agencies that are around to assist them with any form of need that they're there. It's just informational. It's just everything that is free. It's something that we provide simply for the benefit of the residents.
Okay. And then the controlled access part that a person asked about?
Yeah, the controlled access is there is a keypad, and all of our residents get a key fob. So if anyone were to come in at any point in time, regardless of the hour of the day, the manager nor the maintenance allow access. The family member or whomever is visiting the current resident needs to gain access because the resident needs to be able to let them in.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anything else, Ryan?
I also wanted to point out, I apologize, I heard reference, in our earlier neighborhood meetings, we had a discussion with regard to age 55 and age 62. When we submitted our application for tax credit funding to the Colorado Housing Finance Authority, we did identify that through listening comments from neighborhoods, this will be restricted at age 62 and better.
Okay.
How come you didn't state that in the letter?
Yeah.
We're not,
I'm not sure
no.
what letter was sent out.
You said it was against the law to change that to 62.
Let's,
It's not
let's,
against the law. We just needed to be certain.
we're not
that we
going to
didn't
have an
separate
argument from
fair
the floor.
housing. Yeah, it's not against the law. We chose to be more restrictive. We had discussions with the Colorado Housing Finance Agency. We needed to identify, are we going to be tailoring to residents age 55 and older, or are we going to be more restrictive at age 62? When we submitted our application in July, we made the decision unanimously that this would be an age 62 restricted property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Ryan?
Staff has no further
Okay.
comments. Thank you.
We will close the public hearing at 8:55. Planning Commissioner discussion?
I truly appreciate all of the comments, both pro and con in this particular situation. But to go with what the town attorney has said, this does meet the 9 criteria, and staff has shown that everything does come to that point. As this is a zoning hearing, and it will be coming before town council later on, I, for one, will be supporting the rezoning of the property.
So could I just clarify about what the town attorney said?
Yes, please. You're the town attorney.
The town attorney did not say that all the criteria were satisfied. That. So you have to rely upon the.
I said staff would have satisfied those, Jim.
Understood, okay.
I was referring that you had mentioned them and staff satisfied them.
Okay,
for
thank
them.
you. All right.
I didn't mean to speak for you.
Well, of the 9 criteria that we're requiring to be met, the only one I've heard much about is the second criteria, which is whether or not this is the best piece of ground for the zoning, and there has been a lot of discussion about that from the town. But this lot has been vacant since 1994, and vacant land is not highest and best use. And I think it's good that it will be obtaining that, regardless of what goes in there, commercial or otherwise. And I understand all the passion, people are passionate about what happened in their backyard, and that's understandable. But I feel that this type of zoning is probably more innocuous than a lot of potential commercial uses. So I will be supporting this.
Mayor? As I sat here, there's an equal division. There's yays and nays, both in favor. And what I find interesting is that this is something that we have, as commissioners, have discussed in different sessions, and we're asked about. People who know me, who see me in the store, will ask me, and I'm not necessarily permitted to answer, but I always say, show up for a meeting, why don't we have adequate housing for seniors? It is something that everyone at this point in this room, even the youngest man on the second row, will one day be. And not being accountable for that is a huge lack of, to a degree, of responsibility. If my parents were still alive, I'd want them to have a place that I knew would be safe for them to live. And as a Hispanic, we would supposed to be having them in our house and live, but they wouldn't. I know they wouldn't. They'd be like, we want our own place. All right, yeah, get your own place. I hear the concerns, and I respect those concerns, but I also think we have to respect our elderly and give them a safe place to live. So I will be in favor of the rezoning and making the recommendation. Thank you.
I appreciate everybody coming out tonight and speaking, whether you were for or against the project. That helps us a whole lot in our decision. But I really have mixed feelings about whether to approve or not to approve this project, because I'd like to see more affordable housing for seniors, since I am probably there myself. But also, on the other hand, by taking away the commercial zoning and make it residential, I think we take future funding or revenue away from the town. So that's my mixed feelings about it. But in my opinion, too, I think that by having a community of seniors in this area, rather than commercial or a retail center, I think there will be less traffic in the area. And even though more traffic might be on Main Street or Jordan, I still think you're going to have more traffic with a retail outlet there, with more chance of accidents happening or people crossing the road and getting hit by vehicles. I do, in my opinion, think that by having a residential area or senior living area, that the property values will not be affected as much as maybe retail would. And I do think that seniors are a close-knit bunch of people that do stick together and help each other. And I believe that by having the residential as a senior housing area, you'll have less crime in the area than you would as a commercial. So I will be in favor of the change.
I'm in favor of the proposal to change the zoning. What I noticed is that we didn't have this ability to zone for this when these developments were originally made. We didn't consider it. It wasn't something we thought about. And I think it's important I'm glad that we've changed our zoning now to include this as an option. And we will need to integrate. Integrate means to fit it in. It's a puzzle piece that has to fit into our community, and I think that's appropriately done in this particular situation.
Yeah, I'd concur with everybody else. You know, what I think is important to point out, too, is that as the Planning Commission, we have 9 criteria that we have to vote on, right? That there's a need that exists, it's the correct site, that there's been significant changes, and I think staff has done an appropriate job addressing all of that to my satisfaction, so I'm also in support.
I just had a question, Jim. The applicant stated that they had changed their proposal on this community to age restricted to 62. Is that something that could be put in as a condition of approval?
That's an occupancy issue, it's not a zoning issue.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to check. Thank you. All right, I concur with my fellow commissioners that I think the project, the applicant has tried to work with the neighborhoods and made some modifications. It's certainly a need that's been demonstrated that, again, we have to go by the criterion that they are and the statistical information that we're given. and so I'll be in support as well. Any further discussion?
No.
All right, do we have a motion?
I move that the Planning Commission recommend Town Council approve the Bradbury Ranch Planned Development Fourth Amendment rezone request.
I second.
It's been moved by Rob, seconded by Ileana, that we approve the Planning Commission recommend Town Council approve the Bradbury Ranch Plan Development Fourth Amendment rezone request. Signify your approval by yes.
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 Okay. Any other items for staff? Staff items?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Rosemary?
And Commissioners, I just wanted to remind everyone that we will be having the joint Town Council Planning Commission study session on next Tuesday, August 15th at 5:30 over at Pace Center.
Okay.
Discovery East Lab. Hope you all could be there. I know Eric won't be able, or you will be.
I'll be there.
Yeah, everybody will be able to make it.
Okay.
And then also, we'll have our first training session prior to the August 24th Planning Commission meeting at 5:30.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary.
All right, we will adjourn this meeting at 9:04.